Keaton Marr expected the company retreat to test his patience, not his judgment. Then a storm flooded half the mountain lodge, leaving the single father alone in the last available room with Lizette Calder, the elegant boss he had spent 3 years carefully not wanting. There was one bed, a locked road, and enough workplace history between them to make every silence dangerous. But before sunrise, Keaton found water crawling beneath the wall and discovered that a safety report carrying his signature had been altered. By morning, one executive would accuse him of using the night to manipulate Lizette. A weakened deck would threaten everyone at the retreat, and the small field notebook tied with his daughter's orange cord would become the only proof that Keaton had tried to stop the danger weeks earlier. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Keaton Marr wrote everything down. At 37, he had learned that memory became soft whenever money entered a room. Dates shifted. Warnings became suggestions. A firm no returned as a cautious maybe. His field notebook did not change its mind. The black waterproof cover was scarred at the corners, and its original elastic had broken months ago. Keaton's 8-year-old daughter, Piper, had replaced it with a bright orange loop of paracord. Her first knot had been lopsided. She had refused to redo it. It only has to hold, she had told him. The notebook now rested in the outer pocket of his duffel as a bus carried 40 employees of Alder Crest Equipment into the Adirondack Mountains. Keaton served as the company's director of product and field safety. He tested climbing hardware, camping systems, portable heaters, and any training site the company planned to use. He was not the loudest person in a meeting. He was usually the person asking why everyone else had become comfortable, before the evidence did. That habit had delayed the company's proposed purchase of Black Pine Lodge. The lodge stood above a dark lake, built from stone and cedar, with 2 guest wings connected by a glass corridor. Alder Crest wanted to turn it into a permanent training center. The acquisition team called the property ready. Keaton's preliminary inspection called it promising but incomplete. He had flagged movement in the north observation deck, moisture near the generator room, and missing maintenance records for the oldest guest wing. Bryce Tolan, vice president of acquisitions, called those concerns manageable. Keaton called them unverified. The argument had reached Lizette Calder. Lizette was 35 and had become president of Alder Crest after rebuilding its failing direct sales division. She carried authority without raising her voice. Her glossy platinum blonde hair ended in a precise blunt bob at her jaw, making her blue-gray eyes look even sharper. She was tall, curvy, and composed, with a clean modern style that made every room seem slightly less organized before she entered it. Keaton had admired her from a safe distance for 3 years. He admired the way she read footnotes. He admired that she remembered warehouse employees' names. He admired that she never asked a tired person to prove they were tired. He kept those observations out of his notebook. Piper knew only that Lizette was his boss, and that his boss sent handwritten thank you cards after difficult product recalls. Piper was spending the weekend with Keaton's older sister, Maura. Before the bus left, she had made him promise to call after dinner and to bring home a pine cone that looked important. Keaton had been raising Piper alone since his wife, Elise, died from a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Grief had not made him noble. It had made him careful. He packed school lunches at night, checked every permission slip twice, and distrusted any feeling that threatened the routines keeping their small household steady. At Black Pine Lodge, the retreat began with polished presentations and strained enthusiasm. Bryce unveiled architectural renderings of new training walls, conference cabins, and a glass pavilion extending over the lake. Keaton noticed the renderings used the north deck as their centerpiece. During the afternoon sidewalk, he crouched beside one of its cedar support posts. A hairline gap had widened since his visit 3 weeks earlier. He placed a small ruler against it, photographed the measurement with his offline field camera, and recorded the time in his notebook. Lizette stopped beside him. She wore a fitted burgundy knit wrap dress beneath a tailored cream coat, practical black leather boots replacing the heels she used in the city. "Worse?" she asked. "Different. I need to know why. Bryce approached before she could answer. The seller's engineer cleared it yesterday. The signed report is in the board folder. Keaton looked up. I haven't seen a final structural report. You signed the field summary. I signed my observations. That isn't clearance. Bryce smiled, as if explaining patience to a difficult child. Let's not turn the retreat into another inspection. Lizette's gaze moved between them. No one uses this deck until Keaton reviews the report. She said it quietly. The decision still landed. Rain began before dinner. By 7, it hammered the lodge roof hard enough to cover the sound of conversation. Wind pushed lake water into silver lines, and the road down the mountain disappeared behind fog. Keaton called Piper from a quiet corner near the lobby fireplace. She showed him a missing front tooth, reminded him about the pine cone, and asked whether his boss was there. Lizette happened to pass behind him. She has shiny hair, Piper whispered loudly. Keaton closed his eyes. Lizette leaned slightly toward the screen. Your father has spent all afternoon preventing adults from making expensive mistakes. Piper considered her. He does that at home for free. Lizette laughed, a genuine low laugh Keaton had never heard in the boardroom. The call ended when the lights flickered. 10 minutes later, a pipe failed in the west guest wing. Water poured through 2 ceilings and soaked the electrical panels serving 12 rooms. Lodge staff moved guests into the remaining wing, while the storm closed the county road. Employees paired up without complaint until the front desk manager reached Keaton and Lizette. 1 room remained. Bryce had already taken the small staff apartment because he claimed he needed a private connection for an acquisition call. The buses could not leave. The lobby furniture was being used by employees displaced from flooded rooms. The manager held out 1 keycard. Room 314. King bed. No sofa. Keaton looked at Lizette. I'll take the floor. The floor is where the water seems determined to go tonight. Then I'll find a chair. Lizette accepted the keycard. A hint of color touched her cheeks, but her expression remained calm. 1 bed, she said with a small smile. Don't overthink it. Every instinct Keaton possessed began overthinking it immediately. They entered room 314 just after 10. It was warm and narrow, with a stone fireplace, a single armchair, and 1 large bed beneath a wool headboard. Rain traced the windows. Their wet coats hung beside each other near the door, with an intimacy neither had approved. Keaton set his duffel on the luggage bench and removed the field notebook. Lizette noticed the orange cord. Piper's work? Her knots improve when nobody corrects them. That sounds familiar. He looked at her. Are you comparing my safety reports to an 8-year-old's knot? I'm saying both become tighter under criticism. The teasing eased something between them. They made practical rules. Keaton would use the bathroom first and change into a forest green thermal shirt and clean field trousers. Lizette would change second. They would divide the bed with 2 spare pillows. No one would pretend the arrangement was normal, and no one would make it more meaningful than 1 storm-damaged night. When Lizette returned wearing an opaque ivory-ribbed sleeveless top and loose black lounge trousers, Keaton concentrated very hard on updating his inspection notes. She sat on the far edge of the bed. You really document everything. Only the things people may later wish I hadn't noticed. Outside, thunder moved across the lake. Then Keaton heard a soft ticking beneath the room's heater. He stopped writing. The sound was too steady for rain and too wet for metal. He crossed the room, knelt, and touched the baseboard. Cold water shone on his fingertips. The leak was small enough to ignore and precise enough to worry him. Keaton removed the heater cover without touching the electrical controls. Water beaded around an old copper line disappearing through the wall. Behind it, wedged between the pipe and the cedar paneling, was a faded red maintenance tag. Lizette held her phone flashlight while he eased it free. The tag was dated 14 months earlier. Its printed boxes were blurred, but the handwriting remained legible. Recurring freeze damage, west riser, inspect generator conduit, and north deck footing, before winter occupancy. The lodge's digital maintenance archive contained no such entry. Keaton placed the tag inside a clear evidence sleeve from his inspection kit. Then he photographed the leak, the pipe, and the place where the tag had been trapped. "That is the same area you flagged in your preliminary report," Lizette said. "The moisture is traveling through the wall. It may connect to the generator room problem. And the deck footing? Same drainage slope, different symptom, possibly the same neglected cause." Lizette sat at the small desk and opened the acquisition folder on her laptop. The storm had weakened the internet, but the report Bryce mentioned was cached locally. Keaton read it over her shoulder. The cover page carried the seller's engineer's seal. The final appendix contained a field summary with Keaton's digital signature beneath a sentence he had never written. "All observed movement is cosmetic. Property suitable for unrestricted group use." His hands went still. "That's not my conclusion." Lizette enlarged the page. "Is it your signature?" "It's an image of my signature. I use it on internal receipt forms, never on engineering conclusions." The room became quieter than the storm. Keaton opened his field notebook to the entry from his first visit. The page numbers were pre-printed. His notes described visible deck movement, missing drainage records, and a recommendation to restrict access pending an independent structural review. The next page contained a sketch of the footing and the names of 2 employees present. Piper's orange cord lay across the open book. Lizette read without touching it. Why wasn't this in the digital system? It was. I uploaded photographs and a typed summary the same night. Who had permission to edit the acquisition folder? You, me, legal, Bryce, and his project coordinator. Lizette closed the laptop slowly. "If I accuse him tonight, he will say the storm has made us dramatic. If I wait, people may use that deck in the morning. We secure the danger first, preserve the evidence second, decide blame last." She looked at him with something warmer than approval. "That is why I trust you." The words affected Keaton more than the one bed had. They called the lodge manager and moved the rooms nearest the leaking riser. Keaton shut off the water branch under the manager's supervision. He placed physical barriers across the glass doors leading to the north deck and photographed every step. By midnight, the immediate risk was contained. Back in room 314, Lizette sent the suspect report and access logs to the company's general counsel using an encrypted offline queue. Keaton stored copies of his photographs on 2 memory cards. Neither contacted Bryce. They returned to the bed because exhaustion eventually made symbolism less important than sleep. The pillow boundary stood between them. Keaton lay on his back, fully dressed except for his boots. Lizette faced the windows. Lightning briefly outlined her profile. "You were right to offer the floor," she said. "I knew that would become obvious. I meant you offered without performing it. You didn't wait for me to praise you." Keaton turned his head. "The standard is low. Lower than you think." For a while, she listened to the rain. Then she told him about Adrian Voss, the man she had once planned to marry. They had worked together at her previous company. When their relationship ended, he told colleagues that every disagreement she raised was personal, and every promotion she earned came from private alliances. Nothing he said was dramatic enough to disprove. It only made people question whether her decisions were truly hers. "I left the company," Lizette said. He kept the story. Keaton understood why she never attended office parties alone with one person, why her door stayed open during late meetings, why even kindness from her arrived with clean edges. "Bryce will use this room," he said, "if he needs to. Then we document why we're here, the manager's assignment log, the flooding, the closed road." Lizette looked across the pillows. "You make romance sound like chain of custody." "This is romance?" Her smile appeared in the darkness. "Don't overthink it." He did not sleep for several minutes after that. At 6:15, an emergency alert woke the lodge. Overnight rain had triggered a small landslide across the county road. No one was leaving before afternoon. Keaton checked the generator room at first light. Water had entered through a cracked conduit sleeve, but had not reached live equipment. The lodge manager shut down the affected circuit. Outside, the north deck had dropped another fraction of an inch. Bryce arrived wearing an expensive rain shell and impatience. "Why are there barriers across the deck?" "The photographer is scheduled at 8. The deck is closed. Keaton said. "According to the report you signed, it is safe." Lizette stepped out of the corridor behind him. She had changed back into her burgundy dress and cream coat. Her hair was precise again, but Keaton now knew how much effort precision cost her. "The report is under review," she said. "The deck remains closed." Bryce's gaze flicked from her to Keaton, then toward the elevator serving their floor. He understood the room assignment immediately. "Of course," he said softly. "Under review." By breakfast, a photograph of Keaton and Lizette entering room 314 had reached 3 board members. The image came from the hallway security camera. Someone had photographed the monitor with a phone. The accompanying message claimed Keaton had privately pressured Lizette to block the acquisition after his safety objections were rejected. Keaton found out when General Counsel called him away from the dining room. He listened without interrupting. Then he offered to step away from the investigation and the retreat. Lizette refused both offers. "You will not investigate the altered report," she said. "Neither will I. Counsel is appointing an outside reviewer. But you remain responsible for immediate site safety because the weather has not paused for gossip." It was the exact balance he would have recommended for anyone else. At 9, Bryce tried to move the morning strategy session onto a covered section of the deck. He told employees the closure was an excess of caution and opened one of the glass doors himself. Keaton stepped between Bryce and the threshold. "Move," Bryce said. No, there was no shouting. Keaton simply remained where he was. At that moment, a deep wooden crack sounded beneath the rain. One outer deck railing tilted toward the lake. The support post below it shifted visibly, pulling 3 boards out of alignment. No one was standing there because Keaton had kept the doors closed. Bryce stared through the glass. Keaton opened his notebook and recorded the time. The failure was limited, but the meaning was not. An independent engineer reached Black Pine Lodge by utility vehicle after the county cleared 1 lane of the road. She examined the deck, drainage slope, generator conduit, flooded riser, and the maintenance tag found in room 314. Her preliminary conclusion was direct. Repeated freeze damage had redirected water toward the north footing. The post had deteriorated below grade, where a casual inspection would miss it. The deck should have remained closed until invasive testing was complete. Keaton's original recommendation had been correct. That did not prove who altered the report. The outside review took 6 weeks. Aldercrest paused the lodge purchase and moved the retreat online after everyone returned safely. Lizette disclosed the room assignment, the storm conditions, and every decision she and Keaton made overnight. She recused herself from employment decisions involving him until the review ended. Keaton returned to work under the temporary supervision of the audit committee. People were polite. Some were also curious in the hungry way that made politeness feel thin. He did not defend himself in hallways. At home, Piper noticed he had begun carrying the field notebook from room to room. "Did it do something wrong?" she asked. "No. Someone tried to change what I wrote after I wrote it." Piper inspected the orange knot. "But this part stayed." "Yes. Then they changed the wrong thing. Keaton wrote that sentence on a clean page. The investigators recovered the original upload from a server backup. Its file matched Keaton's notebook and photographs. 12 days later, Bryce's project coordinator had replaced it with a revised summary. Access records showed she used Bryce's credentials from his office computer. Emails supplied the motive. Bryce's annual acquisition bonus depended on closing Black Pine Lodge before the quarter ended. The seller had offered an additional consulting contract if he prevented further testing from delaying the purchase. He instructed his coordinator to insert Keaton's signature image and told the seller's engineer that Aldercrest had accepted cosmetic movement as the cause. The engineer had sealed the broader report based on those false representations without visiting the north footing. His licensing board opened a review. Bryce claimed he had only streamlined internal paperwork. The evidence disagreed. Aldercrest terminated him for falsifying safety records, interfering with an investigation, and misusing security footage. The coordinator cooperated and received a lesser disciplinary outcome. The company referred the financial arrangement to council and withdrew from the purchase until the lodge completed verified repairs. There was no public confrontation and no satisfying room full of applause. There was a corrected record. Keaton's signature was formally cleared. His field process became the basis of a new rule requiring safety attachments to remain version-locked and independently archived. Lizette met him in a glass conference room after the review closed. The door remained open. "I owe you an apology," she said. "You didn't alter the report. I rewarded Bryce for speed so consistently that he began treating caution as disloyalty. I did not tell him to cross the line, but I helped draw the map toward it." Keaton respected the distinction, because she did not use it to escape responsibility. "What changes?" he asked. "Safety reports go to the audit committee before acquisition. Your budget becomes independent from the teams you inspect. And no executive receives a closing bonus on a property before safety review is complete. That is a start." Lizette looked at the notebook on the table. "And us?" It was the first time either had named the question. Keaton wanted to cross the room. Wanting was not the same as permission. "You're still my boss." "Yes. And the truth can be clean while the situation remains complicated." "Also yes." She smiled, though disappointment softened it. "You really do document everything. Only what matters." They left separately. For the next 4 months, their relationship stayed professional. Not cold, not secret. Keaton attended meetings through the audit committee. Lizette never used private access to influence his work. When Piper sent a thank you card for the shiny-haired boss who had made her father call from the mountain, Lizette answered with a photograph of an unusually important pine cone. The lodge completed its repairs under independent supervision. Alder Crest chose not to buy it. Instead, the company signed a limited training agreement that could be canceled after any failed inspection. Keaton was asked to lead a new product integrity office reporting directly to the board's risk committee. The role removed Lizette from his chain of command. He accepted because the work mattered, not because it solved their personal problem. 2 weeks later, Lizette asked him to dinner. She did it in writing, after council confirmed the reporting change. The message contained no pressure and an easy way to decline. Keaton said yes in person. Their first date was at a small restaurant near Piper's school. Lizette arrived in a cobalt blue fitted dress and looked less nervous than she was. Keaton arrived 7 minutes early and checked the emergency exits without meaning to. They spoke about things that did not belong in reports. Lizette admitted she hated corporate retreats. Keaton admitted he had kept the pillow from the center of the lodge bed against his chest after she fell asleep because it smelled faintly of her perfume. "That is unexpectedly reckless information," she said. "I waited until the chain of command changed." She laughed the same unguarded laugh Piper had drawn from her by the fireplace. They did not rush. Lizette met Piper at a public family day 3 months later. She did not arrive with expensive gifts. She brought 3 different pine cones and asked Piper to decide which one looked most important. Piper chose the smallest because it had survived being stepped on. Keaton watched Lizette accept the ruling with complete seriousness. By autumn, Black Pine Lodge reopened its north deck. The repaired structure included new drainage, visible inspection ports, and a brass plate recording the work without hiding the original failure. Alder Crest held a 1-day safety workshop there. Families were invited for the final afternoon. Keaton stood on the deck with Piper beside him and his notebook in hand. The orange cord had faded but still held. Lizette joined them, wearing a cream coat over a deep green dress. Below, the lake reflected a clear sky where the storm had once erased the road. Piper took the notebook and added a second orange knot beside the first. "What's that one for?" Keaton asked. "The first one gets you home," she said. "This one reminds you not to be weird when you're happy." Lizette covered a smile with one gloved hand. Keaton looked at the woman who had once shared a bed with him because there was nowhere else to sleep, then waited until they were free to choose what came next. He held out his hand. Lizette took it openly. The notebook remained between them, secured by 2 imperfect knots that had never needed to look flawless to hold.